Are you looking to create some fun new light up projects with conductive thread, but don't know where to start, or just want some basic tips when sewing with conductive thread? Well, I got you. Let's talk about starting sewing with conductive thread, and I will give you some tips and tricks. Hi, I'm Christina Hadley Dyke Roosevelt, and I love wearable art. I love creating light up fantastic things and using conductive thread as well as wires and a whole bunch of other stuff. So let's dive right on in. First, let's just talk about the conductive thread. Commonly, you can find it on these bobbins, and there's stainless steel, and there's also silver plated. Different ones react different ways. I do know that sometimes with the silver plated, if you leave it for long periods of time, it will tarnish and then your projects will not work anymore. But with the steel, it lasts a little bit longer. So let's talk about the needle. I commonly use a needle with a little bit larger of an eye. It also means that the needle itself is a little bit thicker. This helps me actually be able to thread the conductive thread. It is a little bit thicker of a thread than some regular thread. So I also enjoy making sure that I have either a needle eye threader or some extra thread that I can double through and pull it throughout, which does the exact same thing as the needle threader. It just helps be able to thread the needles when you need a little smaller needle, or the eye is tight, or you're at the very end of a project and you don't want to freshly cut your thread down and down because you're really tight on thread. The other thing that you can do, like I said, is actually just give yourself a nice fresh cut at a slight angle so that there's a little bit of a point to your thread, and immediately thread your needle. Those are definitely the top ways to get that needle threaded. So once you have your needle threaded and you're not tied, what do? Well, you need to also make sure that if you have a longish tail, that it is contained in some way. I sometimes like to hide it beneath my button board right here. So I'll hide my knot up here because the back of these are completely plastic. There's no metal for it to short circuit. If you have like a tail that is just kind of flopping in the wind, it could have the potential to hit the other like if it's the negative tail, it could hit the positive tail and create a short circuit so that your circuit does not actually light up your LED. And that is no fun. Some other ways that I have secured my tails in the past is I put a little dab of clear nail polish at the very end. This helps it from unraveling. You'll find that with conductive thread, because of how loosely spun it is, it does sometimes like to unravel at the very ends and knots. So cutting super close to your knot tails can cause problems. So if you put a little dab of clear nail polish, or if you put a dab of puff paint, that will definitely help. Puff paint is a very distinctive look, so make sure that you're okay with that type of look. Okay, time to insulate the thread. Now, you don't always have to insulate your thread, but you also have to treat it like all exposed wire. So when you have your circuit right here, you can see that all this is exposed wire. There are different ways to insulate it. Like I said before with the tails, you can use puff paint, which I have on the front here, but it's actually not insulating my threads. That is just add a top decorative thing for this project. But what you can see on the front is that the circuit is completely contained. And I could have done the exact same on the back and just had this top completely contained with another piece of felt. That would enclose my circuit completely, and there would be no chance of this bending over on itself and short circuiting this project. You can leave it completely exposed, knowing that it won't touch at all. Kind of like in these earrings, I have no puff paint, or it's completely exposed. But I also know that it won't ever touch itself because of the board itself. So to sum up, to insulate, you can either use puff paint, or you can fully encase, or you don't have to and you just have to know that there's a potential for a short circuit or other problems if the is bendy. Next, we're going to talk about the different components that you use. So I have shown you commonly this lily pad board. This is just a basic button board with an on-off switch, and it will be a basic thing where you just want your LEDs to turn on or off. You can see that there are large portholes for you to sew through. This means that if you do have that little bit bigger needle with a little bit bigger eye, you can still get at least 3 times around the port. I always recommend doing a little bit more than that, but that is partially because I'm not gluing my boards down to my fabric at all. So I want a little bit extra security when I'm actually sewing it on. You'll also see that here are 3 different types of LEDs that I have sewn with. And you'll notice that they actually all 3 have a slightly different size port. The Adafruit ones is the smallest one, and it's a very small port. I definitely struggled to use these ones. I used them in my Cherry Cheek Santa earrings, which I can link down below. But I could only get around this port 3 times before the hole was too small for my needle and thread to pass through. Which, as long as you get at least 3 times, you definitely have that solid connection and you shouldn't have any problems. So on some of these other ones, the hole is a little bit bigger, which makes it a little bit easier to actually get through. Now, if you're trying to use this with solder, you'll find that the holes are far too big and you have to either use a lot of extra solder or there's a larger hole that can cause other problems. But that's for a later time. Let's move on to planning. So when you're planning circuits like this, it is an amazing thing to use these little alligator clips. They help you just be able to connect, where's my board? Right here to, so we go positive, or a negative, to a negative, and then we can go a positive to a positive, just like that. And now we have the basics of a circuit right here. We could even grab a battery. Let's see if I got one available right here. And put that battery in, reconnect, and then turn it on. And there we have it. We have our circuit planned out with basics, and now we know that this LED is good, as well as the battery, because these sometimes you use the batteries a lot and they suck energy. So it's always great because of conductive thread is a little bit more expensive and it takes a little bit longer to sew the entire circuit instead of just connecting the 2 ends like you would with a wire. That pre-planning your paths of your thread and the actual thread route is essential. But conductive thread is amazing. You can create some really fun projects. I will link a few of them down below from my blog that you can definitely try out. I'm also going to link some really fun components that you can use to create your very first light up project. I'm super excited. I hope you get creating something magically fun, and we will see you in the next video.